Good afternoon, Maine. Welcome to the Muddy Waters Podcast. I'm your host, Chuck Ellis. The Muddy Waters Podcast exists, as you know, to help the people of Maine better understand what's going on in Maine politics. Unfortunately, the mainstream media wants you to be so focused on what's going on in Washington that you don't notice what's going on in your backyard. And so we're trying to help fight against that by helping you be better informed by bringing on great guests like who we have with us today, Jason Savage, chair, or the executive director, I should say, the Maine GOP. Thanks for joining us, Jason.
I'm really happy to be here. I use Muddy Waters as an example around the state when I talk to people about how we need to get our message out and talk about things that are important instead of relying on the legacy media to inform people, because they're just twisting everything that's going on into half-truths and lies. So happy to be on here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean that's the problem. Like, I would prefer if the mainstream media actually did their job and focusing on informing their people and the people, and not being biased and partisan and twisting things that the Republicans say, but like appropriately questioning authority on both sides of the aisle. I mean, that's really what we want the media to do, but they're not doing it. And so, I have to exist and I have to do this. So, but I'm happy to do it given the fact that we need it done. And so, I'm excited to have you here. I think one of the things that we'll get to in a little bit, but I'm really excited because I feel like a lot of people don't necessarily know what goes on, what the Maine GOP does. And I think there's a lot of accusations that get thrown out and frustrations. And I think part of that is from not completely understanding like what it is that's going on, or how representative democracy works, essentially, which is, we'll get to that in a bit. But first, I wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of share. Obviously there's, as we were saying before, there are a lot of people who've been involved in politics for a while, probably know who you are, and generally speaking, know what you do, and how you came to be where you are. But there are people who are like, are newer to engaging in the political process. There is a group of people, I think they kind of still exist. It's a ex group called the Pine Tree Patriots, which are a lot of people who are not happy with the status quo. They're independents, libertarians, Republicans, and a lot of those people probably don't really know who you are and like where you come from and how you got into this position. So I figure we'll give you some time to kind of share that. Who are you, Jason?
Yeah, well, thank you for the opportunity. I don't know that I've ever done the full thing on camera before. I'll apologize if there's background noise. I'm sitting here in my office in Augustus. I grew up poor in Maine. In Howland, Maine, a logging community, bedroom community to a mill town. Worked my way up through and was actually working at Martin's in 2009, 2010. And Paul LePage came to me and said he wanted to run there. I knew him. He was a general manager. I did some work with he worked out of the corporate office and some other things. And I knew him well enough to say, yeah, you're the guy, because you'll actually do what you say you're going to do. And I believe that the government work for all the people, not the special interests, not the lobbyists, not any old group above. That we should all be treated equally. So I got involved in 2010. I remember. I hope he doesn't. The gentleman I'm going to not name, but who will know as I do. I was sitting there in a meeting, and this consultant told Paul LePage early on, way before the primary, if he didn't run using clean election money, taxpayer funding, that he couldn't win. And he said, Paul, I know you'll probably tell me, don't let the door hit me on the way out, but I'm going to tell you this. And Paul LePage brought his hands down on the table and said, you're right, don't let the door hit you on the way out. He slid all the paperwork across the table to me, and he said, yours now. And that was the start of the LePage 2010 campaign, and something I was very proud of. We got outspent in that primary team, and we won the primary. That did not help me make a whole lot of Republican friends in the established Republican Party at the time, because back then we were working against the establishment just to have a fair shot at that. But we won. I think we got 37%, like a 7-way race or something, with less than $200,000.
Wow.
Kind of a shock. Yeah, it was a pretty big shock wave to people. And then we went on and we won the general election. At that point, we had a very, very good, growing professional team of people. But I was just the guy from Martin's who wanted to see something change and found the candidate to do it. And so we did. And then we ended up having to, go through inauguration, the transition, then the inauguration, and, running the government and building budgets. And I wasn't, I've never wanted to be a bureaucrat. I'm sorry I think most of you are useless. But I've never wanted to be a bureaucrat. So I did not want to go work in the administration, but I co-founded a nonprofit and spent 2 years advancing a conservative policy agenda where we did things like we supported and promoted regulatory reform, health insurance reform, tax cuts, controlled the growth of spending, charter schools and school choice. I got experience in virtually every area of policy that from the outside, again, didn't want to be a bureaucrat. And then in 2013, that agenda had largely been advanced to where it had passed. We had Republicans in the House and Senate, and we needed to make sure that Paul LePage was going to be in a good position to get reelected, and we need to try to keep the legislators we had, because 2012 was rough. I was not here in 2012, but it was a big election against us. So I came to the party, took this job, and we had a big successful election in 2014. Great team of people. I know there are probably a lot of people listening who are involved in that, staffing, volunteering, working, whatever. Thank you all very much. That was a big deal. We proved that Mainers will embrace a conservative agenda when they see it, and when it's for their best interest. So then I did that. We won the team. They tried to, but it was really the team. We won an award for some things that we did, and national political award. And I hung around, got involved in 16, and did a whole bunch of work for President Trump's election in 16, and a bunch of other. And I've been doing this ever since. And I've been offered a lot of opportunities outside the state of Maine, but I've been raising a family here, and I don't want to watch the state of Maine go the way of Vermont or Massachusetts. So in the fight, and I think this past election we were only down 3 seats in the House, and it was like 40 total votes that decided the majority. On the edge, and I believe Maine is really conservative at heart, and it's going through a process of evolution right now where we're coming home to our roots. And I think this cycle is probably the one where we do come home to our roots.
Nice. Well, yeah, no, we definitely made progress. And I think that's sometimes something that conservatives in Maine forget or fail to notice, because we didn't win. And it's like, I'm a sports fan, and in sports, a lot of times people consider their team's season a complete failure if they don't win the Super Bowl, for instance. And having my 49ers, I'm a 49ers fan, yes, but they didn't win. They didn't go to a Super Bowl after like the 1994 season until I think it was the Colin Kaepernick years. Right. And that was a long period of time of not being relevant. And at that point, I'm like really happy to, even if I go and my team loses. Right. And so I say that kind of as an analogy, because like, I think a lot of times people just get so focused on, well, we didn't win. And like, obviously we should be disappointed that we didn't win, especially when we're only 40 votes away. And we could pick apart different races and talk about how, well, there's at least one race in my count, two races actually, I would say in my county, where it's like, geez, if we had done some things a little bit differently here, I think we pick up one of those seats, if not both of those seats, right? Heavily focused on those this next cycle, by the way. But I think like the reality is like we have made a lot of progress, and Maine has been shifting more blue, and yet in the House we're shifting, we're gaining more seats. So that definitely is encouraging to get as close as we are. Obviously, we want to get the rest of the way there, but yeah. So
I heard Grover Norquist one time give a speech, and for those of you who don't know who that is, he's still doing it, but he's for a long time been sort of the guy that across the country that stands up to everybody who tries to raise taxes. And I was at an event. It was a small, I don't know, there were maybe 40 people there, and there was a sense of frustration that we had not cut the income tax in Maine as far as we wanted to cut it. It was back in the LePage administration, and he said, if I get up from here tomorrow and I decide I want to go to California, and I start driving down 95 from Augusta and Pennsylvania tonight, going to stop, throw up my hands and say, I didn't California, so I'm going back. He said, I'm going to stop and I'm going to rest and I'm going to get up the next day and I'm going to keep going. And that's how we have to approach policy. We can't decide, and we have to approach it. Winning legislative elections and other things is this, when I started back in 13 and 14, I think it was in that range, that time period. I don't remember exactly what that year, but we were down in the second congressional district by 12,000 voters to the Democrats.
Really?
Right.
Wow.
So, yeah. And right now we're up 31,000. And that's for a decade of sustained work, knowing that the long game here is to turn that district red and not just have it be a district that's a swing district that they sometimes and we win sometimes, but we're building a long-term sustainable majority of Republicans in second district. And now we're taking what we learned and working it into the first district. And we're talking to donors and we're getting funding to go advance that same voter registration effort into the first district. None of these things, you're not going to find a state in the country where it just suddenly becomes a Republican majority overnight without the long-term work happening. And that's what we do, I will say I was in Providence, Rhode Island, back at the beginning, second, and I'm there with all the and directors from the Northeast United States. And the one thing that seems to plague the Northeast United States when it comes to the Republican Party is that every 2 years, they don't win a majority in their legislature, or they don't win the biggest race people are looking at, and they throw everybody out and they start over. And then they're, while we're there, they're asking us about how we do things and how did we do this. And we're not magical. We're not miracle workers. We're a dedicated team of people who gets up every day and does the work that, admittedly, it's not sexy, exciting work. Getting 12 people to change their voter register from Democrat to Republican is not something that people issue press releases about. But when you do it dozens of times over months or hundreds of times over a few years, I think that's the thing I wish more people would embrace is a real difference you can make when you do the work. We have people who drive around with a bundle of the green registration cards in their car, and everybody they talk to, they ask if they're registered. And if they say they're not, they help them fill it out. If they say they are, are you a Democrat or Republican? And do you realize what the Democrats are all about? Is that really who you want to associate yourself with? And it makes a difference. And so I don't know, just an example of the type of thing that we do. And the difference between Maine and these other states they're every 2 years they're starting from square one.
Yeah. No, that's definitely. You mean like they basically clean house and fire people? Is that what you're getting at? Or
well, they often have staff permanently.
Okay.
Like we're seeing, they all look up. We're used as an example around the country because we have a team of people that are always working, and we're a small state, and a lot of the states kind of like say they can't do it. What happens is everybody gets their hopes up for whatever race that they're looking at, and then they don't win in a big way, or they don't win enough, and then they're like, everybody's got to start over because that's the mindset. And then that new people come in. Sometimes it takes 6 or 8 months for the new team to get into place, and then they got to learn how to raise money, and they've got to learn how to do all these things. We're at where we have programs that have worked multiple cycles. In this last election, we had turnout. Republican turnout in Maine was 84%. Democrat turnout was 82%. We actually had enough voters to have a majority in the House and Senate. We had a problem that I don't know how many people even know about this, but I think I can get away. We're looking at recounts, and we were having a lot of ballots were Republican at the top and then blank as you went down. So a vote for President Trump and a vote for the Republican for Congress, and then the state Senate and state House, it goes blank. That could have been, that might have made a difference in one of those elections. And when you're talking about votes out of however many 100,000 there were, you start thinking our message right now has to be, you got to do your full ballot. You can't just do your ballot. And it's things like that we have the ability to stop and look at and think about and craft a strategy for. We've been working on that since the recounts last year. How are we going to do this?
Yep.
We started that and some of these other states, they don't even really realize they have a problem like that if they do.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. So like, so let's do this now. Why don't we get into like, because I think a lot of people don't know, and you're kind of getting into some of the stuff that you
Yeah,
guys
I'm just
do.
kind of going
No,
off.
no,
and
I think
doing it.
I think that's great. I mean, that's the whole idea of this type of podcast is like we're just having a conversation, and I'm just like, okay, let's. But so what does, because I think there's a lot of confusion out there about like what does the Maine GOP actually do, and we could get into the critiques that they have about like why doesn't the Maine GOP do this, and why aren't they doing this, and why don't they do that. But like like before we get into kind of addressing kind of some of those concerns, because I think it's worth doing, but like what is the Maine GOP doing, generally speaking? Like what is it that they're doing behind the scenes that people maybe don't see?
There's a lot. There's a lot of it. Again, I apologize for bringing kind of boring topics to muddy waters here, but maybe we'll get clearer waters in the understanding of it as we go. So we do virtually everything related to the infrastructure that every single Republican candidate from president down to dog catcher relies upon. We have a voter file that we maintain and append and add information to constantly. Going through that, making sure that that is up to date, accurate, and not full of bad information, as some people may have just noticed when we did the we pointed out to Shenna Bellows that she had a bunch of duplicate voters in her file. That particular case involved myself and the chairman driving around to a number of town offices and meeting with, alone right there is, hours and hours and days of work. That is just one little piece of what we do. We have to raise money. We, typically will raise and spend several million dollars or more in partner, sometimes on our own and sometimes in partnership with the national committees that are helping provide funding that, we know that to support their Senate candidate, their candidate for Congress or whatever, maintain all those relationships with all those national committees. And I do a lot of presentation work, making the case that Maine is a good place to invest money. I think that it's probably underestimated by a lot of people how many hours, how many documents, how much research, and how much just general work has to go into the kind of money flowing into the state of Maine that we have seen in the last 10 years. Because you go back to the years right before I was executive director, they're scrounging for a little bit of funding to try to help do one round of mail for absentee ballots. And in this, we did 17 or 18 rounds of mail to targeted voters. So we do that. We build profiles in the voter file. We build profiles of the people that we think need to be contacted more often or talk about certain issues, so that we're communicating with them effectively. We negotiate and manage all of the platforms that are used by all the national groups in Maine, as well as all the county committees and town committees. We support all 16 Republican county committees, and I think it's about 300 Republican town committees, including doing trainings. Just recently, I've done 2 fundraising trainings and a data center training. We're going to be doing a more advanced data training coming up here in a few weeks, where we've brought people in on virtually and taught the county committees of different fundraising approaches and how to build a plan and goals and all of that. And that's, we do communications, we support other communications. So we're not shy about making our voice heard. I do weekly radio on WGAN. The chairman does off and on radio with appearances wherever he can. We talk to the press both in on the record environments and off the record environments and background. I've served as a surrogate for President Trump in each of the election cycles. Continue to communicate with the team in once the election's over, and work on the public policy side of things, where I can offer insight into what would help Maine when I'm asked. We have additionally here, we have somebody, a staffer who just manages the financial reporting, the human resources, and all of the various things that we have to do. Because when we're raising money, sometimes it's done directly from donors in the state of Maine, sometimes it's done through other arrangements, and so we have to make sure all of that is done properly. She manages all of that, plus coordinates a lot of the training and other things that I do. We've just hired a communications director who's been really kicking butt, holding Senate President Matty Daughtry's feet to the fire on us all to sit down and shut up and just accept the property taxes. And then we have another young woman who manages the office here itself, because our office headquarters here is just almost like I can look into the Blaine House backyard from where I'm sitting right now.
Yeah.
And we regularly host other, committees, county committees, other groups, legislative meetings, and things like that. Legislators can't do political meetings in the State House, so we open our office up and make that available, and is the 2 conference rooms we have here. And so there's, I'm just scratching the surface now, but currently, because we have, I think I've lost track of how many gubernatorial candidates we have, but my phone is always on for the campaign managers.
Yep.
And we're managing all of the candidates on the platforms that they need to use, making sure their access is setting them up, helping them find people. We don't do this in a way where we're only helping one. They all know that to help them, and that's part of the onboarding with them. So if they call and say, hey, we need a person who can do this, or we need a person who can do that, we know a lot of those people, make the connections and help make sure everybody has what they need. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, whether it's one of the candidates or another that wins, they need to be in the strongest position possible to win the general election. So we try to let them, the best candidate win, and then we jump in and help with the general election.
Wait, so the Maine GOP is not picking winners?
Here, shocking is.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell a little story about this, and it's gonna make some people mad, but I don't care. 2010 in the primary, I was with Paul LePage, and we were getting shut out of access to almost everything, and we had to win in spite of that establishment trying to stop us. And one of my only things that I said, I actually think also I someday I'm going to get the state committee to pass a rule that says that we all have to swear an oath to the Constitution of the United States as staff. But until then, the other thing is the state party will never take favorites in a primary, because I was in a situation where the state party and the establishment was against me, and with Paul LePage, and we had to overcome that. And that's wrong. It's the wrong thing to do. We need to accept that. So we do not, when we communicate with the candidates, we communicate with them all at the same time. They should all see that they're CC'd together on the emails. They know all at the same time what's going on. Some of them don't answer their emails as quickly or return a call as quickly, but it is absolutely 100% as perfectly fair as we can be. Now, and there's one exception to that. That exception is if you're a candidate and you start to use the resources that we provide to you against us, we will not help you. So we have had candidates, no serious candidates, but we have had candidates who signed up and then immediately started using the resources we're providing back us. That's not healthy or helpful for anybody. So that is like the one way you can do it. But yeah, everybody gets the same database access, the same access to events. They get notifications at the same time. They get the same advice. Virtually everything we can do. If they ask for an introduction to a vendor, we'll give them all the same introduction, the same information. Do quality control if they want to. If they want to come to us, and one of the things I really like, there are good vendors and good providers of services to candidates, and there are bad ones. So I always make sure they know. If you wonder if you're getting ripped off, just come ask me and I'll tell you. I'll take a look at your numbers and tell you. So we do that for everybody. But what happens is, inevitably, when a candidate feels like their campaign isn't going well and they don't know how to turn it around, time-honored strategy in politics is to run against your party and tell everybody that your party is doing it to you. And I think what has happened is a lot of the candidates who've been trying to get traction, the party's out to get me. The party's this. We're not. I mean, one person somewhere, one Republican in a town committee told them they didn't like them, but that doesn't know what we're doing here. And I can attest to it. I have a Bible and swear to it. We do not play favorites. And I think more people would know that if they were here.
Well, I think that's an important thing. So like, I think it's like, because inside my mind, part of me wants to say, well, shouldn't the party be focused on pushing the candidate that's going to give us the best chance to win in the general election, right? This is like something that I internally struggle with. I don't do this, mind you, but like as a member of the Republican Party, that's what I want, right? I want to make sure that the best candidate, the candidate has the best chance of winning, and as much as is possible, most closely represents my values, right? Gets elected. That gets the chance to face the Democrat in the general election, because I want to have the best chance of winning. Like, I don't want to elect the person, have the person win the primary that doesn't have a chance of winning the general election, right? As a Republican. But as a chair, like I'm the chair of the Cumberland County Republicans, and I also run this podcast. Like I'm in a position where I know that in my role, I need to be fair. Like our role, and I think, again, this is in a sense contrary to popular belief, our role is actually not to pick anybody until after the primary, because we need to let the people, the GOP themselves, choose which candidate they want. This is the process, right? The party should not be doing what the Democrats have done. And what is it? The last three elections where they boxed Bernie out in 2016, and then they basically boxed him out again in 2020 with Biden, and then just appointed Kamala Harris. We want the voters, the people, the Republicans here in our state, to be the ones that are selecting that candidate, and then we'll get behind them and offer them all essentially the same access to what we do, because we do the same thing in Cumberland County. Like, I, as an individual, I know that I have every right of freedom as an individual, not in my capacity as the chair or my capacity as podcast host, but like, I could endorse candidates. In fact, even as a podcast host, I could, but I'm not going to do that personally. I'm making the decision not to do that, but I have every freedom and every right to do that individually, just not in my official capacity, because again, we need to make sure that the people of Maine who are Republican get an opportunity to decide who they want to be their candidate. Right. That is the process. That is our job. That is our role, and it's good to hear that those practices are in place at the Maine GOP. That the goal is not to anoint anyone. Now, what wealth?
Every time you anoint somebody, what happens? Look at the Democrats. What happens when they anoint somebody? What happened to Kamala? Did anointing her go well? Did anointing Hillary Clinton end well? I mean, Joe Biden didn't, and he won.
Yeah.
But he actually had to work through, at least for a while. He had to compete in the election. If you call sitting, in your basement sipping Ovaltine competing. But I want to just say this. I think of it as if we were to sit here and talk about using positions to pick favorites in a primary, that would be us saying we don't trust the voters. So we have to exercise our supreme judgment or authority. That's like the pull of tyranny. Like, it's pulling you better than the people. And I think anytime we get there, it's really, really, really dangerous. So I can't imagine a world where my vote is more powerful than any one other person's. And I believe that the greatest thing the Republican Party staff, elected officials, anything else that anybody with influence, we need to be taking the power that is residing with the people who are in the elites and in the government. We need to give it back to the people, and not, this whole, well, power is ours now, so it's good. And then when it becomes the Democrats' power, it's bad. That's a really, really dangerous way to look at it. You're just growing power of the people who are eventually going to do you harm. So I think, whether resisting the pull of tyranny with saying, no, we're not going to play favorites at the party, or saying our government needs to take federal powers and give them to the states and take state to the towns. All of that is about restoring the power of the individual in the process. And I think that needs to be like the pinnacle of what we think about as Republicans.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So, yeah, no, I think those are really, I think, good things to be reminded of, and make sure people understand that the role of the party. And there are accusations, and I've received some of them about whether or not I don't play favorites, regardless of what people may choose to believe, because I don't I personally don't have a dog in the fight. I want the best candidate to win, and I don't know who that is. is the reality.
I wanted to say the viewers, listeners out there, if you're accusing the host, this guy here, Chuck, if you're accusing him of that, you don't know what. I've been in the meetings, I've seen him. He's fair, right down the middle, and somebody you should be proud of, especially if you're in accounting and he's your chair.
Well, thanks, Jason. That's not why I had you come on here, but I will send you Venmo later.
I know we didn't discuss that. That was not a paid endorsement. I just decided that I was going to say that because I get, we have a real problem in the party with good, honest people getting involved and getting out of the party and taking all of their talent and their time and their energy because people don't understand. Take the time to understand, and we need to stand up for that. We're a much better party. We have a team of people that work together and a bit of experience than constantly tearing it down and rebuilding it.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And speaking of that, let's get into it, because I think it's really easy to be the executive director of the Maine GOP, right? It's really easy to get Republicans to march in the same direction.
All the time. Yeah, I mean, you should see how easy. I just snap my fingers, and the conservatives and the moderates, they hug each other and they say, "Thank you, Jason," and then I never have problems again for like a year.
Right. So speaking of that, because I think the reality is, like, it's a well-known fact, right? Like one of the major differences between working with Republicans versus working with Democrats is and I mean, I hate some of these words, but it's a really good way to describe it, right? Is that, like, sometimes they say sheeple, that the Democrats largely are sheep, and they obey their masters, right? Essentially, they have the sheepdogs to make sure they march in the right direction if they need a little, motivation. But with Republicans, it's more like herding cats. So how, like, I think one of the challenges I think we have right now as a party is it feels like we're fractured, right? And with people wanting to blame one another and this, that, and the other thing. And, like, what do you do, and what can we do to more effectively, I think, work together as a party with people we don't necessarily see completely eye to eye with?
Great question. And I know saying great question after somebody asks you on a podcast is so cliche, but it really is. And it's one of the challenges that we face every cycle. I don't think we're as fractured as we have been in the past.
That's good.
I think from what I've seen, and I know a lot of Republicans, have watched them evolve over years, we are a very different party than we were 8 years ago. And the improvements to our party are actually in really, really good places, like looking out for the American worker and the working class Maine family. Everybody's, our party's looking out for the other side isn't. So herding of cats is not as difficult on the policy issues. In most cases, we still have disagreements from time to time, and I understand that. And when you get to, like, the legislative side of things, sometimes people are representing very different things, where they call it a spreadsheet bill, where a bill affects one district positively and another one negatively, and our representatives represent their people in those cases. I think that the evolution of the party has been really good because we're focused more on the things that matter, and we're actually the party that's doing the things that need to be done, like securing the border. I don't think you can go find an open border Republican or a Republican who wants to do comprehensive whatever reform, whatever, on immigration before they secure the border. Like, we came around and we said, no, let's secure the border. So President Trump has done an awesome job of uniting us around a core set of issues, into the belief and real reverence for the Constitution and individual rights and religious freedoms and things like that. He added something to us that we not have, that I think that neoconservatives of the past to touch, like, we were like a pub NAFTA or whatever. So we're in a better place there. But the answer, I guess, in short, for how do you herd the cats? You give the cats a place that they all want to be. You give them the home that they need, and they'll want to be there. And so what we try to do is to welcome people. And, you've been at some of our state committees are not always super friendly, and people disagree.
I'm not sure I've been to a state committee meeting where everybody did agree and there wasn't some significant portion of disagreement. I mean, I think we all walk out happy that we're in a room of people that we are, rather than the Democrats. But there's always contention. I think one of the things about Republicans is like we have strong opinions, and we all think that we're right, and that's one of the challenges, right? We all have slightly different views and on both how to do things. And I was thinking about this recently too. Is like one of the things we have a lot of people who are like business owners, and business owners, especially business owners who are successful. One of the challenges, if you're listening out there and you're a business owner, one of the challenges is you're not that good at taking advice, and you think that you know what you're doing. And then you also get this with legislators who win in red districts that think that because they won in a red district, that they can educate people in blue districts on how to run. So we've got a lot of opinions, and I think we don't like march in lockstep. But ultimately, we're much happier to be working with one another than to be working with the Democrats.
Right. And I think of the state committee as a good example. And I know we're not going to get too into details of some of those discussions,
Sure.
but I know we've both been there. I've been at the front of the room with a microphone most of the they disagree, but everybody wants Republican.
Right.
They're still going to go to the next work together on, whatever is going on. They're still going to show up their county fair and register Republicans. And we've had people very, both extreme ends of the spectrum, and they will sometimes agree and sometimes disagree. But we're providing the environment, the home for them to have their voice heard in an important place, and we're listening. Nobody gets gavelled down unless they go way, way, way off the end. And I think that's really healthy. It's a key piece of herding those cats. And I'm so happy that we are not the Democrats. I mean, you almost have to sacrifice your entire personality to be a Democrat, just be constantly getting up every morning and looking to Twitter or whatever about what the new rules around pronouns are, so you don't hurt somebody's feelings, and have to go make sure that you're PC today because you might get canceled if you say the wrong. I can't imagine sacrificing that much of my identity to a group of people who really have done nothing for anybody who works for a living or is trying to live the American dream.
Yeah, what's interesting too is like I was having a good conversation with a good friend of mine who is, I think he would probably call himself more of a progressive, because we've got all these fun terms. I think we would say that progressivism is regressive, not progressive, but either way, like he's in that camp, and he's going to vote Democrat. That's what he's going to do. But he's very dissatisfied with Democrat leadership. And I think when we talk about Democrats, I try to highlight this on the show. I'm not talking about your average run-of-the-mill at-home Democrat. We're talking about primarily the legislature. Yeah. I mean, there are like we just call them SJWs of the Democrat movement that do exactly what you're talking about, as well as the legislators are like, how am I going to get on Reddit to figure out what I'm supposed to be mad about today? Right. And just for fun, what I heard is this whole Sydney Sweeney thing. The liberals on Reddit were like, why are we getting upset about Sydney Sweeney? So that's just for fun. They're like, even though like that was that whole crazy thing about like why somehow it's racist for a white girl to put on jeans and be attractive. I'm not sure what that's about, but the Democrats, a lot of them they just
showed every American guy under the age of 30 what party they should belong to, and it's not theirs.
Yeah, well, and I heard that Sydney herself registered as a Republican was the word on the street, and Trump was happy with that, so that was fun. But yeah, the Democrat.
I think I saw a video of her shooting in a pistol range, and she was a pretty good shot too. So clearly, she's not too concerned about what the progressive left thinks of her.
I would guess not. I mean, money helps, and I think she'll make quite a bit off of this. But I'm sure like the ridiculousness. I mean, that's what, and this gets at one of our problems that we I think it'd be a good thing to talk about, which is like I think Charlie Kirk was. I know Charlie Kirk was here. I was at the event. He was here on this last Saturday, and one of the things that he commented on, which I think he's dead right on, and I think one of the things that the Republican Party has largely been accused of by a lot of my friends that are not on the right, is that the Republican Party is the party of no, and we don't do a great job of projecting what we're for, right? And Charlie Kirk didn't say it exactly like that, but what he was essentially saying was that why we won nationally in 2024, because we lost here in Maine, right? But why we won nationally, and maybe why we made some extra progress here in Maine, that we didn't get where we wanted to be, it is not because we did a great job of communicating what we're for, but is because many people rejected wokeism. Right. So like the Democrats are choosing all the wrong issues when it comes to immigration, when it comes to transgenderism, the education system, when it comes to, boys and girls sports, when it comes to like the economy. And my brain is glitching, but there are a number of other different, DEI, CRT, all these like woke things. When it comes to those issues, a lot of people actually just rejected the Democrat Party, the Democrat ticket, more than that they signed up for conservatism. And so like we have to figure out, and maybe you have some ideas in this direction, like how are we going to project what it is that we're for, rather than just simply that we're not them. I mean, which right now helps a lot that we're not them. Yeah.
No, good questions. I would say President Trump was happy with how we did in 24. So while a lot say we lost, I know that I was asked to help him get that electoral college vote in the 2nd district, and we did. And the turnout numbers show that we did things right, and that blank ballot problem is a serious thing that we're going to fix. But we do need to be a lot better at talking about what we're for. So we could run a list right now. And I would encourage, if you're out there, this is, come up with your list, and it's going to be the same. We're for freedom of speech. We're for the Constitution broadly. We're for religious freedom. We are for lower property taxes and the lower tax burden overall. We're for an American economy that works for everybody, not just the limousine liberals who run the big Fortune 5 companies. And we're for high quality education with parental involvement in for our kids and grandkids. We're for young families being able, economically to buy homes and start a life and put down roots, because roots are important in a family's development and in that foundation. There are a lot of things that we're for. We do get caught up in being reactive, but sometimes you need to take a breath and look at the horizon and do that. I before I wrote out a list, and we talk about the things why I'm a Republican, because it's the party of Abraham Lincoln, and we end slavery and accomplish the greatest civil rights achievement in American history. It's because we've been the party that has stood up for so many important things over
civil rights,
the years. Yeah, we're there for the civil rights movement. The Democrats weren't, and we've let them twist all of our history and make it sound like it was them. The NRA was really created and supported by Republicans to help teach minority communities, people, how to defend themselves. The Democrats were, on the other hand, were the party of Margaret Sanger, and have been pushing a pro-abortion agenda in our inner cities.
Anti-human. And so we can say it more broadly. It's an anti-human and an anti-children and an anti-family agenda.
It's somewhere between population control and eugenics, really.
Yeah.
Is the approach that they have. So I think we've got to talk about the things that we're for. And I tell people I'm pro-life. That's something I'm for. But I personally am not just pro-life on abortion. I'm also pro-life on the death penalty. I don't support the death penalty because I think that it's not, unless I'm in a situation of self-defense where I have to defend myself or the life of somebody else there, it's not my choice to make. So that's a good example of kind of being maybe a little bit out of the box on it, but what we're for, and what we're for should be very popular. We also do need to, the Democrats right now are doing such a good showing us all they're crazy that we probably don't need to always amplify that, but we do it at times. We need to show what they're.
Well,
it's helpful.
we have to do it
Yeah.
because the media is not going to do it. So like we have to talk about crime, and like that's another thing. We're pro public safety, right? Whereas
Yep.
whereas the other side is like, and this is the thing is like when you look at what we did what they did nationally, like you have to look at it and be like, how in the I mean the Democrats are looking at it and be like, why? Like even if you are interested and you're okay with like heavy amounts of immigration, like you also want public safety, right? Like
Mhm.
even the Democrats that are okay with that, they're also like, yeah, this is crazy. But you also want to make sure that it's done in a way that doesn't cause the cost of living to dramatically rise. So even on their own side, where they're like they're more in favor of open borders and they're more in favor of helping people coming from other countries in difficult situations be able to have a place to go. There's also this like, yeah, but we shouldn't be letting criminals in. We shouldn't be letting children be abducted, right? Like even on their own side, there's like, and so when you look at their agenda that they've been pushing, you have to sit there and wonder, are they so blind that they think that they have such power that there's no way that they can lose? And I think that like cognitive function might be part of the problem. And I'm being a little facetious here, but like I think some of it is like, I mean, their whole agenda is one that is not in touch with reality. So it shouldn't surprise us if they don't realize that the things that they're doing are in some ways harming them. And, again, dying on the sword of boys and girls sports is probably not wise. But one of the things I wanted to highlight too is like one of the other things, because I feel like half of our problem is we're also not adjusting to communicating with the next generation in a way in which they understand, right? So I think sometimes when we talk about taxation, which is a problem, right? And I think a lot of your older Republicans are like, yeah, I don't want to be taxed. I don't want people to take money, right? And I think that there's a degree of truth to that with the younger generation, but I also think that there's a translation error here. And I think that like I shared with somebody, I've shared with a number of people that I think that sometimes a better way to talk about that is to really focus on how the government programs are not working and using the term and the approach of misappropriation of funds, right? Like that there's resources that are being used and abused and are not accomplishing the tasks that they're supposed to be accomplishing. I think your younger, especially your younger, more like people who might be shift a little bit more liberal that we might be able to win over if we could communicate differently. They look at that and they're like, well, I don't mind so much. And I think I also don't mind so much paying taxes if I thought the taxes were doing something that was actually positively benefiting my society. And so sometimes it's like, well, we're spending all this money. The more money we spend on trying to fix the housing crisis, for instance, somehow we end up having more quote unquote unhoused or homeless as the people, right? Like, well, like there seems like there's an error there in strategy, and we should look at like how do we fix that. But I don't know. That was for free.
Yeah, I think that there's there. I think that it's really a waste in those dollars. I
Yeah.
have a couple of kids that are in the workforce now, and it becomes very real with the paycheck, and they realize how much money is coming out, and they're kind of start wondering. Another thing I was observing a focus group years ago down in Portland, mostly liberal women, and I was watching this play out, and they were talking about, why am I paying tax and we're not taking care of the homeless in this city? Why am I paying taxes and it's going to putting up illegal immigrants in hotels instead of taking care of the people that have been here helping build this city for the last 20 years or 30 years or 40 years? It's a very real thing, and I think it even crosses generation. We did recognize that one of our potential strengths going forward is Gen Z, and how they're not following in the footsteps of the generation before them, and they're not going to be exceedingly liberal. And so we've brought in a young woman here who is in that generation and who is doing a lot of social media and communications. Very smart, very aggressive, and we're really happy. And you've had her, Christina, you've had her on here before she was with us. So we're hoping to continue the good work that she's been doing through the next election cycle, because she understands not just the placement of the media and how to communicate it, but the issues. She understands it really well, and how that generation is looking at it. So that was a big thing for him coming in. He's new this year, and it was a big point on his agenda. We're going to get someone to do these things And I'm not old, but I'm not proficient in TikTok and Instagram. So
Very few
it makes me
people
feel
are.
old. It makes me feel old. So I'm happy to have her. She's out there being aggressive, and she's already got Maddie kind of losing her mind this week over her property tax task force. So watching your new communications director go head to head with the president of the Senate in a news center segment is always enjoyable, especially in their first month on the job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really glad that we're attacking that issue, like the idiocy of like creating a task force to fix the problem that you created. Why don't you just fix the problem? Stop taxing us out of control. Let's go back to a zero-based budget and not just automatically increase the budget every year, but make people make an argument for why you're doing a good job and we need to keep funding you, rather than just guaranteed not only funding you again but giving you extra money. Like Maddie, I mean, the Democrats lost their minds. But
they came in just recently and repealed a property tax cap. Janet Mills was happy automatic school spending increases with all the teacher raises. They put all this on autopilot, and now they're running a task force to figure out what happened. It's like an arsonist who drops the match and then turns around and says, "I'm going to investigate who started this fire." We all know, Maddie. We all know. Stop the game. Everybody can see.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, far too many people just trust the Democrat. What's one of the things that's a problem, and this is just an aside, I just feel like I have to say, but is that this is with people in general, right? Like they're like, I don't trust the government when it's not their candidate. You kind of alluded to a similar type of thing earlier, but when it's not their party. But we don't trust the Democrats because we're Republicans, and the Republicans don't trust the people who are in power when it's the anyway, my brain's not. I think I was saying the same thing twice. But the idea is that we trust the government when our party's in control, but we don't trust the government when the other party's in control. And so Maddie Daughtry, even though she literally just got finished helping the Democrats increase spending and increase taxes, she is now putting out this is how we're going to fix it. And I think a lot of people on her side are like, oh, good, we're going to do something to fix it, right? A lot of the Democrat voters are gonna buy that stuff because it's being said by their side, and their side tells the truth, and the Republicans lie, and our side says, well, anyway. It's this problem where we need to be appropriately critical of both sides, even our own side, and ask questions to our own people. I think this is where we need to be better than the Democrats and not just trust people because they're on our side of the aisle. Not to say that we need to condemn our side and try to destroy them and take them out. But I do think that we one of the things that we're better at is diversity of thought, number one, but also appropriately being appropriately critical of our own faults and failures.
Yeah. So my first thing I'll say to viewers out there on this topic is rule number one: never trust the government, no matter who's in charge, because that government is way too big with way too many moving pieces for you to just have faith in it. Never trust the government. I think two is Democrats love to try to win elections based on their intentions. They policy that is completely and totally catastrophic, does the exact opposite of what they claimed.
The Inflation Reduction Act, per se.
Yes,
maybe?
Yes, yeah. They will go out and they will send out mailers and run TV ads of we were cracking down on this, or we were building the working class this way, or we were, and they don't even look at their results. They just look at their intentions, and we need to be the ones that hold them for the results.
Yeah. And
I was saying on the radio this morning, right now it's a unique situation because. And I take no joy in this, but under the environment the Democrats have to go out and face the people in. Health insurance premiums are going to go up over 30%. Highest electricity rate increases in the country, almost double in Connecticut in second place. Property taxes are through the roof. People can't afford a house. Education levels are absolutely in the tank. Embarrassing. I think we're below Alabama, if you can imagine that. Crime is increased. Drugs are increased, and homelessness is increased. There's literally nothing that has gotten better during Janet Mills' time in office. And you can no longer hide this. They can no longer say, well, yeah, that crime was just in that town over there, not us. I mean, it's happening everywhere. There's homelessness in all the cities. They can't say the Republicans caused this property tax increase. They've done the things that, and they've been in charge. They can't escape consequences that they've created now, which they've always been able to do in the past. And we just have to, play pin the tail on the donkey with them and make sure that it all is right there on display coming next year.
Somehow I guarantee you they're going to blame Trump for this, or they're going to try to blame Republicans because, like, well, if we could have done more, we could have accomplished more if we would have had more support. But, like, I mean, they control it.
Janet Mills is all like, yeah, Trump for tariffs hurting the revenue, and then there's a surplus of revenue, and then I'm a genius. Like, it's Trump's fault until I get credit. It's bogus. And there was the great tweet that was out there a while where the Democrats were trying to blame Trump for inflation, except the chart itself was almost all the Biden era, and just like a tiny little sliver at the end, which was mostly flat, and a tiny sliver mostly flat. But the Democrats thought that their people were just gonna into it, and this was the official like DNC Twitter account, and they thought that they would just tweet and say Trump caused this, and they'd show Biden's inflation line, and that their people would just repeat it. And they got ratioed. They got beat up pretty bad over it. But that's the mindset.
Yeah,
that's what they think, that they can just blame us for anything, and the media, and their people will just parrot it and the truth is that they've been fairly successful. Inflation and the TV viewership is not what it used to be.
Yeah,
and people like you and others are breaking through the echo chamber and telling people the truth. So we're grateful.
Well, fortunately, we also have, I don't think I can do an episode without shouting out the Maine Wire, who's also doing a fantastic job here in the state of Maine, bringing to light the things that the mainstream media won't cover. And so we obviously really appreciate them. And don't know where they've had a substantial impact, I think, on helping people better understand some of the issues that are going on in our state between the Chinese marijuana grows and the crime stuff. Outside of that, all the other organized crime and a number of other things that's been great. But yeah, the mainstream media doesn't want to. They don't want to do their job.
Yeah, but, the Maine Wire. I know Steve's not going to get any invitations to the beautiful people awards ceremonies that the press association is going to have, but they really should fill up a box full of all the awards he deserves to win on the marijuana, the Chinese thing, and others. He's literally outdone the entire press corps with that. There no other investigative story even approaches that in the past couple of years or longer. He maybe should be treated more seriously, but I know, if you're working for a lying, dying newspaper or a team with liberal ownership that's really, really desperately trying to figure out how to help Kamala win next time around, you probably can't give Steve Robinson this, but he's outperforming all you guys. So
Yep.
Get it together.
Absolutely. Yeah. So one of the other things that we talked about, and I want to get to as well, is like there's one of the things that I constantly hear, and I have my own response to it. But I constantly, there's this like if the Maine GOP would, like, and it seems like there's a lot of, when I talk about how I think and maybe we're less fractured now than we used to be, but I do think that there is some we're kind of this loose association. That's what the Republican Party is. And I think that there's a lot of dissatisfaction, I think, with the Maine GOP. And obviously, as the executive director, like a lot of that, I'm sure you deal with a lot of fun emails and phone calls and different things like that. But there's a lot of frustration, I think, because of the fact that we don't want to lose and we don't win. The legislators deal with this as well, right? People are like, well, they should do more. They should do more. And it's like, well, they're in the minority. What more they're going in there every day and trying to do something, knowing that the Democrats are just going to vote for whatever they want anyway. But, when it comes to how to win elections and whatnot, I think that's a separate issue. But I think you deal with a lot of criticism, and how do you handle, what's your answer to the critique, I guess, that the reason that we're not being successful and we weren't successful in winning the House, even though, as you said, Trump was pleased with how effective we were. Like, what's your answer to like that kind of critique of like essentially it's the Maine GOP's fault?
Yeah, so the answer has to be driven by the question is, and they're so diverse. So, I get a lot of emails telling me that I need to arrest Janet Mills.
Oh, do you have that?
Authority.
You don't have that authority?
No, they didn't give me that one. Or impeach Janet Mills. We always say, show us 4 Democrats who will vote for it, and we might, but until there's Democrats coming out to say that they're going to do it, it's a waste. There's a lot of requests for legal action there. We've done quite a fair amount of that, but a lot of those requests that come in, look, I understand a lot of this people are frustrated and we hear it. I read every email. I try to respond when I can. There's my one pen pal that's always insulting me. I'm never going to respond to you, sir. But a lot of it is things like, well, I've been through it enough now to know that there are certain cases where we would have standing and be able to sue, and others where we wouldn't. And a lot of what we're doing is raising the issue and, raising awareness to it. But we wouldn't be granted standing in court if we wanted to sue on it. Or, it looks very wrong, but it's not illegal. And we have resources. We have to be careful of how we spend them. And, $1 million in legal fees a year is not going to help us win elections. It's just going to get us beat up in court on a bunch of things that we don't have standing on. So, I think at this point, it's also really important to point out that our team is 4 people here at headquarters working year round, but our committee is made up of Republicans elected by all 16 counties, including the county chairs, like Chuck and Cumberland. Then people who represent from the Maine House Republican office, college Republicans, and a few others, and officers who are elected to be the leaders of that group, usually from within the body. That's 81 people. And when I want to do things in the routine operating side of things, I actually have to go to them and have them approve that spending. And we do that every 2 years. And then the rest of what we do is political, and that is really the election related stuff, i.e. spending for candidates and support for absentee ballot programs. We do, easily $500,000 every 2 years promoting people voting and getting them to vote early. So we spend those resources as carefully as we can. And while I really do understand the frustration a lot of people have with certain issues, there is not a lot a political party can do when when Troy Jackson looks like he's committed mortgage fraud. We can send the information to the U.S. attorneys. We can't launch our own investigation, and so we try to preserve our resources for those things where really in our wheelhouse that we can do. I tell you that if you really want to make a difference, our not just the 4 of us that work here and members of the committee, it is every single registered Republican in the state. And I promise you that if you're out there, you're a Republican, you want to make a difference, and you reach out to your town committee or your town committee, they're going to welcome you to a meeting, and there is going to be that you can do that will make a difference. It's usually just that do vast majority of the work on either side of the aisle, and other people do smaller amounts as they. But I don't think anybody really understands the difference another 50 or 75 or really putting their heart and soul into an effort could be. Volunteers can win a legislative race with a good candidate, and so you can make a difference out there. We have 4 people here at headquarters. We can't necessarily go here in 151 Maine House races, but we can give you the resources you need with the best data and everything, the canvassing apps and the lists and everything you need, and even strategies. We need those human beings. And if I were to be asked what could the party do to make a difference, it would be I talked about that blank ballot product.
Yeah.
But it would also be that grassroots effort, and something we work on every cycle. But show up for your Republican Party, show up for your candidates, even if they are not your perfect candidate that you agree with 100%, and be a heck of a lot better than whatever Democrat is running against them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that when people talk about what the GOP, my thing is, who is the GOP? Well, the GOP is every registered Republican in the state of Maine. You're all part of the GOP. Get involved. We as you said, we need more people who are involved. I was meeting with a town chair today, and like the frustration that they were sharing was that they don't have anybody who's willing to do anything. And it's not nobody, but like there are very few people that are willing to do much, and and there are limitations on what people can do, and we understand that, obviously, right? Like people are busy, and it would be great if somebody else would just fix everything. But this actually, what's interesting is this is the problem that we have as a culture. It's not just political, but it impacts the political. Whereas we generally want somebody else to fix it, right? This is why we could talk about wokeism in schools, and we could talk about that, right? But what's the primary reason that education is in the position that it's in? We trusted the government.
Because the union showed up and we didn't for the board elections.
Well, I mean, but that's exactly it. Like, we decided that we were going to let other people handle it, right? And because of that, the wrong people got elected. The wrong people are making decisions. Our children aren't being educated appropriately, but also parents. Again, a separate issue from like the actual organizing of school boards is like, if you're an involved parent and you're paying attention to what's going on, you'll realize where there's a problem. Like, who's primarily responsible for the education of your children? It's you, right? And so if they're not doing well, you can, yes, look at how well the school system's doing, but also you have to take that responsibility on yourself. I know it's tough. It's a little hard on parents. I get it. But like, that ultimately is your job and your responsibility. And so like, we need to take back responsibility. So if we want to see the Maine GOP move forward, are there some changes that could happen within the GOP that would make it easier? Sure. But ultimately, we need more people to get involved. We need you, and we need you to sacrifice your time and figure out not think about like what you can't do, but think about what you can do. There are small things that could be very impactful. I have one person who's willing to make flyers and strategize, and occasionally I've other people who have other gifts, talents, and abilities. Data analysis that they're willing to lend to the table. I have people who are willing to go and drive and go to doors and do lit drops for people. There's so many different levels of ways that you can be involved, and that type of stuff has an incredible impact, because a few volunteers here, especially during an election cycle, can make the difference in a house race. And we flip one house race here, we flip one house race there. All of a sudden, we own the house, and we can stop insane legislation at the very least. Obviously, we want to do much better than that, but it's volunteers. It's not other people doing it. It's us stepping up and doing it. I think that's really important. A really important thing to know.
41 votes in 3 house races would have changed the entire course of the last year policy. And when you go back and you look through all of these races that were close, it really is the ones that won, the ones that had those 2 or 3 dedicated volunteer things, and the ones that lost were the ones that find somebody to take them door to door, struggling to find somebody to help out with some of these basic things. There's factors, but those strong grassroots teams make a huge difference. And you don't have to be you don't have to walk and talk and act like Carl to be involved. You can just be you. And I think you'd be surprised that we're, Republicans walking around in Armani suits and, with a monocle and acting where it's a working class party of people who want better for the state. And, our former chair was a carpenter, and our current chair is a retired. We're all just like you, and show up to a meeting and meet people. Very pleasantly surprised by the down-to-earth nature of the party, and we can make a big difference if we can get more people involved.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of fun questions, or maybe I think one is going to be like more informational. So I want to talk about like kind of like some things within the party in terms of like the House Republicans and Senate Republicans, and just kind of some structural, I think some structural things that I think matters, but my brain is glitching on that for the moment. So, but the other question, and I'll get back to that, is around, I think there's this belief that especially down here in Southern Maine, it's that the Maine GOP doesn't care about Southern Maine. How do you respond to that? Or about like, they only care and they're only going to try and support races that are winnable?
Yeah. Well, we do care. I look, there is truth, and I didn't come on here to lie or so there is truth. There are races that are not going to get tons of money, but the path to a majority in the Maine House, and probably in the Maine Senate, I'm looking, yes, and the Maine Senate. I have maps on the wall opposite me here. It runs through the first congressional district. It goes through Southern Maine. We've won everything win in the second district, I think, or close. I mean, there are very few places that are blue like second district. I'll say that. So when we're looking at where we have is the first district, and we will be putting resources there. We did put resources there as well. It was not as much because not have as many people willing to fund it. But we're making the case now, and our chairman is from York County, and one of the things that he came into the office with is a mandate that we would get more resources into Southern Maine. Now, the good news is we are a targeted state for the two top races in the congressional district 2. There's going to be a lot of resources going in there to help defeat Jared Golden. And then there's going to be a lot of resources coming in statewide for Senator Collins. But our chairman's commitment is to put additional resources dedicated to the first district to help boost turnout and provide resources to the candidates down there. So, you know, a lot of it is what can you raise the money for? And when you have places that look more competitive in some areas, that's historically been where people want to put the money. But we've succeeded there now. There's not much blue left in the northern half of the state. And so it's battleground Maine 1. Here we come. And we're going to win seats down there. And we're going to grow that foothold. And that is the turning the entire state red is some of those. I'm sorry, I keep looking over the top here because I'm looking at the maps, but it's some of those places on the edge of the 95 corridor, some of those places on the coast that still have common sense and main roots. And I think you're going to be surprised at how much gets down into the first district cycle.
That would be awesome. I think like one of the challenges is like, I think, because I've run in 2022 and 2024, and I think there's two things that I would say, and I appreciate, you know, the honesty, right? I think that's really important, that we shoot straight, and I think some people don't like it, but it's one of the things that I realized when I ran in 2022 again and 2024. Like I feel like as a party, and again as a party, that means every level of the party, right? The most effective candidates are people who have people in their town that are dedicated and are willing to volunteer. The people coming from Augusta to help in Westbrook doesn't make sense. What makes sense is the Republicans in Westbrook getting around candidates in Westbrook and helping them win in a variety of different ways. That's the most effective thing that we can do. Throwing money is not necessarily like helpful if we don't have the volunteers, we don't have the support. But there is a reality of a need for strategic use of funds. We have limited resources, and the objective is to win. You know, we're not going to spend an equal amount of money on, you know, each different race. We have to look at the races that, as far as we can tell, are the ones that are going to put us in the best position to win, because that's what we need to do. We need to take control. And so I think people need to understand is like, do we need people to run for every single race? Yes, that is helpful. You know, we, in order to be able to like make progress in places like Portland, which feels like a lost cause, but maybe 20 years down the road, if we do the right things, we'll be able to turn the tide there a little bit, right? And then there's some other districts down here that are like you know, really purple. You know, there's it could go either way, and if we do the right things, if we gather together the right group of people to work to be able to help candidates to be able to share a positive conservative message about what it is that we're for, I think we can make some progress. But the party needs to be focused on winning, not on you know, making somebody who's running in Westbrook, for instance, where I've run twice, feel better because they spent money and while I lose, right? Because like I worked really hard in 2022, not as hard in 2024. I was off to Africa for 3 months in the middle of the summer, so that makes it difficult to run a race to visit my wife. But the reality is, like, I worked really hard in 2022 and I got 32% of the vote. Like, the GOP had spent $50,000, I might have got 36% of the vote. Which, how does that help us win? It doesn't. And
Right.
so we need to focus on winning. So I think it's important for people to understand that. But I appreciate, and I do agree with you. I've been telling, I think York County is included as well, but I've been telling the Cumberland County Committee that I think winning in 2026, the path to victory runs through Cumberland County. Definitely for the Senate, we have to win Senate District 26 for sure. And we also, I think we have a couple seats in the House that are reasonable that we should be able to pick up. I think that maybe more, and I think we need to work at the other ones, but I think there's a lot of opportunity here. And my other question is not fully formed in my brain, so I don't know where I was going. I don't completely know where I was going.
I can talk about that one for a minute if you want,
sure.
and say, we have a hard time just getting enough signatures to qualify somebody on the ballot in Portland.
Yeah.
And it would be malpractice to spend equal money in that district versus a competitive House district and on the 95 corridor in Cumberland County. And I don't think anybody from you, Chuck, or anybody in the committee would accept that decision that I made, which is those are decisions I do make. If you're out there and you're upset about the spending decisions, it's largely me and the chairman that have to make those strategic decisions. I think it's a sound process we go through. But at the same time, if you're a candidate out there or you're thinking about it, football teams, the glory goes to the quarterback or the running back or the wide receiver, but they win because of their offensive line or their defensive line.
Mm-hmm.
And we view this as a team effort, and having somebody on the ballot in every district, it makes a difference turnout. And you can see the margins when we win or the margins when we lose in the districts without a full slate of candidates. It changes. So maybe you're not gonna win, but you can go knock on the door of a good experience getting to know your community, and you can make a difference. Maybe, just maybe, you get lightning in a bottle, or maybe there's an opportunity. Maybe you're the local football coach and it is a party you belong to because people are going to vote for you because they trust you. Or you're the pediatrician. The football coaches and the pediatricians, there aren't many of them left that are Democrats run, but it's those people with ties to their community. They pull off upsets. So we want to compete everywhere. We can measure performance and where we are at in your district, even if you don't win, by how well you do, and you become the watermark, the high watermark, or the mark that we know, the demarcation line where we know what we could do to improve, and it sets the foundation for potential challenges in the future where we can win. So we need to run. If you're in the northern part of the state, if you're in the Orono district, that's a tough district to win, but higher turnout in Orono can benefit candidates up and down the ballot that are every other competitive except the House district. So you can really make a difference. What I get from people is they have a really good time doing it once they start. It's a lower pressure situation. Nobody's beating on you every day. We're not going to be calling you every day. Did you hit your 60 doors? Did you do this? Did you do that? Come on. We know you're doing it to get the experience, see what you can do and be part of the team. You can have a good time.
Yeah, no, I mean, running for office is challenging, going door to door. I mean, if you're an extrovert, it's fun, but if you're an introvert, it's a little bit more challenging, but it's very beneficial. I mean, I think I grew as a person in incredible ways. And I think that's what I heard, what I started to hear from people when I was originally going to run, is just how it is a positive thing in your life, even in these challenging times. And that we should, it's something that we need more people to do. But I think it's also something that has a lot of long-term benefits, because a lot of people realize, and you're going to get a lot of nicer people than you would think. You're going to get some mean people, but mostly nice people. And everybody knows that this is a challenging thing, that it's difficult to run for office, and it's a thankless job. But it's something that we need people to do. And I think if we're going to win, to your point, we need both. One of the things that I think I found to be true is that whoever the top line ticket item is, has a lot to do with what drives where people vote. A lot of people vote top down, but some people vote bottom up, right? And I think we need a top down and a bottom up approach, and hopefully we can meet in the middle and win. I think is ultimately what we need. And so, anyway, I think that there's probably a dozen more things that we could talk about. But like, I guess before we go, is there anything else that you like are you really want people to be able to know, such as where should they go for information or get in touch with you, all that kind of stuff?
So to learn more about the party, the county committees, and other things, you can find all of that at MaineGOP.com. That website is about to be replaced by a new fancy one that had in development, which is going to have some new features for member committees and things like that. So go to MaineGOP.com, and please rest assured that we are working night and day, weekends. This team here doesn't rest, doesn't sleep. The text messages and emails for work started around 6 a.m. and they usually go till 9 p.m. even in the off year. If you have recommendations, you want to be involved, go to the website. You can visit our office here at 9 Higgins Street in Augusta. But leave any stones unturned. We're gonna work night and day, and we're gonna work with that team of 81 people from around the state to put all those resources out into play. And you know, we've got big races coming up: the governor's race, the U.S. Senate race, the congressional races. Lots of candidates. Please, you know, do your homework on the candidates. Look at everybody. Find the one that's closest to you. Pick the one closest to you. Don't look for the perfect candidate because you'll never find them. And get involved. You know, get some campaign experience. You'll have a good time. You'll make new friends. You won't have to argue with any liberal, progressive Democrats because, you know, they're not allowed. Let's go in 2026.
Yeah, let's do it. Well, thank you, Jason. Thanks for taking the time, and thank everybody for watching. We'll be back here early tomorrow morning. We've got a non-Mainer. I'm going to be interviewing a guy by the name of Sidewalk Steve, and he does some interesting activism, going out and I guess you could call it protesting, or just trying to share awareness of some, you know, insane things that I think go on in our world. So definitely tune in for that, or check us out later for that. But yeah, thank you so much for taking the time, Jason. Hang out for just a second if you could. But we'll see you guys all next time. Oh yeah, actually, yeah. Don't forget to check out muddywaters.us to buy some cool merch and support the podcast so I lose less money. That's how I like to advertise. All right.
Go buy the merch. Go buy the merch.
Thanks. See ya.